Have you ever noticed how many women, after decades of marriage, seem to grow distant or even frustrated with their husbands? It's not about dramatic fights or betrayals. It's something much more subtle and honestly very practical. Over time, what once felt like love and admiration can shift into resentment and exhaustion. But why does this happen? Today, we'll break it down. Imagine a typical household where a woman is juggling multiple responsibilities. Planning meals, managing kids' schedules, remembering anniversaries, and even handling social obligations. These tasks aren't just physical, they require constant mental effort. Over time, this invisible labor becomes exhausting, yet it often goes unnoticed. Many husbands, while not intentionally neglectful, assume that their wives are simply better at it. But this isn't about skill, it's about imbalance. Women often find themselves not only carrying their own emotions, but also absorbing their husband's stress, frustrations, and worries. If he has a bad day, she listens. If he's frustrated at work, she provides emotional support. But when she's overwhelmed, who steps up for her? The emotional labor gap creates a dynamic where the wife feels more like a caregiver than a partner. Initially, she may not mind. She tells herself it's part of love, part of marriage. But as the years pass, the weight becomes unbearable. She watches as her husband relaxes after work while she's still handling household matters. She notices that while she's emotionally present for him, he often withdraws when she needs the same. This creates silent resentment. It's not always expressed in words. Sometimes it's just a deep sigh, an eye roll, or a quiet retreat into solitude. And the most dangerous part? The husband rarely notices. He assumes everything is fine, while she silently drifts away. She may begin to cherish time alone, not because she doesn't love him, but because she feels lighter when she doesn't have to manage everything. The man she once admired for his strengths now feels like another responsibility. At the same time, another issue emerges: stagnation. Early in the relationship, both partners are constantly growing, learning, and experiencing new things together. But as time passes, many husbands settle into routines. They stop engaging in deep conversations. They stop being curious about life, and they lose interest in evolving. Meanwhile, their wives are still growing. They read books, take up hobbies, explore new interests, and seek emotional and intellectual fulfillment. This widening gap creates frustration. A woman who continues to evolve may find herself craving deeper discussions, new experiences, and a sense of shared ambition. But if her husband remains stuck in the same patterns, talking only about work, watching the same shows, avoiding introspection, she starts feeling disconnected. She may still love him, but she no longer sees him as an inspiring or engaging partner. She wants to explore the world, while he's content sitting in the same chair every night. This isn't just about romance fading, it's about compatibility shifting. She once admired his stability, but now it feels like stagnation. She once loved his predictability, but now it feels like monotony. If he doesn't challenge himself to grow emotionally and intellectually, she starts seeking depth elsewhere, not necessarily with another person, but within herself. The relationship, once a source of connection, starts feeling like a gap she has to bridge alone. And that's where the real distance begins. In the early years of a relationship, connection comes easily. There are long conversations, late-night talks about dreams and fears, and an unspoken excitement in just being together. But as time passes, many husbands become less engaged in these moments. The deep conversations fade, replaced by routine discussions about bills, work, or what's for dinner. The emotional intimacy that once felt so natural starts to disappear. A woman doesn't just want a husband who shares a house with her. She wants someone who shares her thoughts, her emotions, her world. But what happens when she no longer feels heard? When she starts to sense that her husband is physically present but emotionally absent? She starts to pull away, not out of anger, but out of loneliness. She may try in the beginning to rekindle that connection, to ask meaningful questions, to express her own feelings, to invite him into a deeper space. But if he brushes her off, responds with indifference, or simply doesn't reciprocate, she eventually stops trying. She internalizes the silence. Over time, a woman in this position learns to keep her thoughts to herself, the things she used to share with him, the small victories of her day, the random thoughts that crossed her mind, the worries that kept her up at night, now remain unspoken. And what's worse? He doesn't even notice the shift. He assumes everything is fine, but in reality, a quiet emotional distance has formed between them, and once that distance sets in, it's hard to bridge. But beyond the emotional disconnect, another dynamic starts to take shape, the shift from partnership to caregiving. At first, it's small things. She reminds him of appointments, picks up after him, and handles the unseen details of daily life. But as the years pass, this role expands. She finds herself managing everything, scheduling his doctor visits, making sure the bills are paid, handling social engagements, even reminding him to call his own family. And suddenly, she's not just a wife, she's his second mother. No woman enters marriage hoping to become responsible for another adult's life, yet that's exactly what happens in so many relationships. And the resentment doesn't come from the tasks themselves, it comes from the imbalance. She watches as he relaxes while she's still organizing. She listens as he complains about stress, yet he never acknowledges the weight she carries. And slowly, the admiration she once had for him turns into frustration. She doesn't want to feel like she's raising her husband. She wants a man who stands beside her, not one she has to carry. And when she looks around and sees other men taking initiative, men who plan date nights, manage their own responsibilities, or simply express appreciation for their wives, she wonders why her own husband doesn't do the same. That question, once a passing thought, starts to linger, and the more it lingers, the more she begins to emotionally check out. Not because she doesn't love him, but because she's tired of carrying the weight of the relationship alone. As the years go by, priorities change. The things that once felt important start to shift, and new desires emerge. Women, especially as they grow older, begin to crave different experiences. Peace, personal growth, and fulfillment beyond the daily grind. They want to travel, pick up hobbies, reconnect with old passions, or simply enjoy life at a slower, more meaningful pace. But many husbands resist this change. They stay stuck in old routines, clinging to familiarity, uninterested in stepping outside their comfort zones. At first, a woman may try to bring him along on this journey. She suggests trying new activities together, taking trips, or exploring new perspectives on life. But if he dismisses these ideas, showing no enthusiasm or willingness to adapt, she starts doing things on her own. She reads alone, goes out with friends, makes her own plans, and in the process realizes something: she enjoys life more when she's not being held back. The man she once built a future with now feels like an anchor, not a partner in growth. She begins to see the contrast between herself and her husband. While she seeks depth, he remains surface level. While she craves new experiences, he finds comfort in routine. At first, she may accept it, thinking, that's just how he is. But over time, that thought turns into frustration. She wants someone who shares her evolving dreams, who embraces the idea of growth alongside her. Instead, she sees a man who refuses to change, who assumes that just because they've been together for so long, nothing more needs to be done. And that assumption slowly chips away at her love. But perhaps the most damaging thing of all is the feeling of being taken for granted. In the beginning, love is full of effort. Thoughtful gestures, small surprises, kind words. But over time, many husbands stop making an effort. They assume their wives will always be there, that love doesn't need to be maintained, that appreciation doesn't need to be expressed, and that is where everything starts to unravel. A woman who feels unseen begins to withdraw. She may not say it out loud, but inside, she starts questioning everything. She wonders why he no longer compliments her, why he doesn't notice when she's struggling, why he never takes the time to do something special just because. She realizes that while she still makes an effort, remembering his preferences, supporting his goals, making sure he's comfortable, he doesn't do the same for her. She doesn't expect grand romantic gestures. She just wants to feel valued. She wants to know that after all these years, she still matters to him. But when he forgets the small things, when he stops saying thank you, when he assumes she'll always be there no matter how little effort he puts in, something inside her changes. She may not leave, but emotionally, she begins to drift. And when that emotional distance sets in, it's nearly impossible to close the gap.